The massive alien ship dropped out of hyperspace near Earth's moon, its sleek purple hull gleaming under the distant sunlight. Inside the ship's observation deck, Admiral Vale of the Stellar Concordat stood tall, his four arms crossed behind his back as he watched the blue planet grow larger in the viewport. "So this is Earth," he said, his translator converting his chirping sounds into standard galactic common. "Another primitive world thinking they're ready for the stars." His aide, a smaller being with silver skin, nodded in agreement. The first contact message had arrived at Earth 3 days ago. The Galactic Council, a collection of the most powerful spacefaring races, had detected Earth's growing fleet of ships venturing beyond Mars. Now they had come to evaluate humanity's readiness to join their ranks. Fleet Admiral James Wilson stood in Earth's orbital command station, watching the alien vessel approach. He was an older man with gray hair and weathered features, earned from decades of military service. Next to him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring the massive purple ship that dwarfed their station. "They're hailing us, sir," reported Lieutenant Mark from the communications desk. Wilson straightened his uniform. "Put them through." The meeting was set for Earth's largest space dock, where humanity would present its fleet for inspection. As the alien delegation's shuttle approached, they passed by Earth's pride and joy, 50 capital ships arranged in a perfect formation. Admiral Vale's expression changed from neutral to amused as he counted the ships. Through his translator, he let out what sounded like a laugh. 50. Only 50 capital ships. We expected at least 500 from a species hoping to join the council. Wilson maintained his diplomatic smile, though his jaw tightened slightly. Quality over quantity. "Admiral, each of our ships represents the peak of human engineering." The alien admiral waved one of his four arms dismissively. "Your ships are cute." The Drachnid Empire's smallest fleet has over 1,000 ships. Even the minor races maintain hundreds of warships. The inspection continued for several hours. The alien delegates scanned the human vessels, took readings, and made notes. Their dismissive attitudes grew more obvious with each passing minute. "Primitive reactor design," one alien engineer muttered. "Look at their weapon systems, barely able to damage a modern shield," another commented. Wilson and his staff endured the comments silently. Only those who knew him well could see the slight twinkle in his eyes, the ghost of a smile that occasionally touched the corner of his mouth. At the end of the inspection, Admiral Vale stood before the human delegation in the space dock's main conference room. Large windows behind him showed Earth's fleet floating in formation. "Based on our evaluation," Vale announced, his translator making his voice sound almost bored, "the Galactic Council hereby classifies Earth as a Class 3 minor military power. Your application for full council membership is denied. You may reapply in 50 standard years, assuming you've managed to upgrade your capabilities." Wilson nodded politely. "We understand, Admiral. Though I hope you won't regret this decision." Vale's translator made a sound like a snort. "Regret? Your entire fleet couldn't stand against even a small attack force. For your own safety, I suggest you stay close to your home system." He paused, then added with what passed for a smile among his species, "After all, we wouldn't want anything to happen to your precious 50 ships." As the alien delegation departed, Wilson stood at the window watching their ship disappear into hyperspace. Lieutenant Mark stepped up beside him. "They fell for it, sir?" Mark asked quietly. Wilson's weathered face finally broke into a full smile. "Hook, line, and sinker, Lieutenant." He turned to look at Earth's fleet, still maintaining their perfect formation. "Sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight. Let them think we're weak. When the time comes," he let the sentence hang unfinished. Out in space, Earth's 50 ships continued their patrol, each one harboring a secret that would one day shock the galaxy. 3 months after the Galactic Council's visit, the emergency alarm blared through Earth's orbital command station. Fleet Admiral Wilson rushed into the control room, where dozens of officers worked at their glowing screens. "Report," he commanded. Lieutenant Mark looked up from his station, his face pale. "Sir, our deep space sensors picked up a massive fleet entering the outer solar system. They're not responding to any communications." Wilson leaned over the main display table, which showed hundreds of red dots moving toward Earth. "How many?" 500 warships, sir. Energy signatures matched the Drachnid Empire's fleet. The room fell silent. Everyone remembered the Galactic Council's warnings about the Drachnids, a warrior race known for conquering lesser civilizations. They had been suspiciously quiet during Earth's evaluation. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," Wilson ordered. "Request immediate assistance." The response came an hour later. Admiral Vale's familiar chirping voice filled the command center. "Earth's status as a Class 3 minor military power does not qualify for Council military aid. We suggest immediate surrender to minimize casualties. After all, you only have 50 ships." Wilson switched off the transmission. He looked around the room at his crew, then pressed a button on his command console. "All senior staff to Project HFY briefing room, now." Deep inside the station, 20 of Earth's top military leaders and scientists gathered around a circular table. The room had no windows and was protected by the strongest security measures humans could devise. "The time has come," Wilson said, activating a holographic display in the center of the table. "Begin Operation Deception Briefing." Dr. Anna, Earth's lead engineer, stood up. Her gray hair was tied back tightly, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. "For those who don't know, humanity never planned to build a massive fleet like other races. Instead, we created something better." The hologram showed one of Earth's capital ships, then zoomed in to reveal its internal structure. "Each of our 50 ships is actually a carrier, but not the kind aliens would recognize." The image expanded, showing thousands of smaller components. "Every capital ship is made up of 2 million smaller ships, each the size of a car. They're held together by magnetic fields and can split apart or combine at will." Gasps filled the room. Wilson nodded. "We built 50 ships because that's all we needed. 2 million fighters per carrier, times 50 carriers. 100 million ships," someone whispered. Lieutenant Mark raised his hand. "Sir, why didn't we tell the Council? They treated us like children." Wilson smiled. "And that's exactly what we wanted. The Drachnids always attack races they think are weak. They'll come at us expecting an easy victory." "But sir," another officer spoke up, "even with our numbers, their technology is more advanced. Their weapons are designed to hit large targets." Dr. Anna interrupted. "Their targeting systems can't track millions of small, fast-moving ships. It's like trying to shoot a shotgun at a swarm of bees." Wilson stood up straight. "The Drachnids will reach Jupiter's orbit in 6 hours. That's where we'll make our stand." He looked each person in the eye. Humanity spent 50 years preparing for this moment. While other races built bigger ships, we thought differently. Today, we show the galaxy why that was the right choice. The room erupted in activity. Officers rushed to their stations, and emergency signals went out to all 50 ships. Across the solar system, crews prepared for humanity's first real space battle. In his private office, Wilson looked at an old photograph on his desk. It showed him as a young officer, standing next to the first prototype of the modular ship system. They had called it Project HFY, after the mythical creature that grew 2 heads for every one cut off. "They thought we were showing them our strength," he murmured to himself. "We were showing them our wrapping paper." Outside, Earth's 50 capital ships moved into position near Jupiter, looking small and vulnerable against the massive gas giant. The trap was set. Now they just had to wait for the Drachnids to spring it. As Earth's fleet moved into position near Jupiter, Dr. Anna walked through the engineering deck of the command station. The walls displayed the history of Project HFY, humanity's greatest secret. Her mind drifted back to where it all began, 30 years ago. It started with a simple question: why do we need big ships? Young Dr. Anna had asked this during a military planning meeting in 2094. The room full of generals and admirals had stared at her like she was crazy. Because that's how space battles work, one general had said. Every advanced race builds massive warships. But Anna had smiled and pulled up an image of a bee swarm. Nature disagrees. Small things working together can defeat much larger enemies. That meeting changed everything. Instead of copying alien designs, humanity chose a different path. They would build ships that could split apart and come back together, like a giant puzzle. The first tests were disasters. Anna remembered watching the prototype break into pieces, its parts scattering across the New Mexico desert. Back to the drawing board, she had said, picking up a broken piece of metal. For 5 years, the best minds on Earth worked on the problem. They studied everything from bee swarms to school of fish, from blood cells to cloud formations. Nature had already solved the problem of many small things working together. Humans just had to copy it. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place: toy magnets. An engineer's child was playing with magnetic building blocks that could stick together in any pattern. That night, the engineer couldn't sleep, excited by a new idea. "We don't need complicated connections," he told Dr. Anna the next morning. "We need simple magnetic fields that can be turned on and off instantly." Progress moved quickly after that. They developed special metals that could change their magnetic properties in microseconds. Each small ship could attach to or detach from its neighbors as easily as turning a light switch. The next challenge was control. How could one person command millions of small ships at once? The answer came from video games. Look at how gamers control entire armies with simple commands. Anna had explained to Admiral Wilson, who was a captain back then. "We need a system that's just as intuitive." They created the neural command system. Pilots could control their ships with thought and gesture, just like moving their own body. The small ships would follow like a school of fish, moving as one unit or splitting apart based on simple commands. 10 years into the project, they had their first successful test. One carrier ship split into 1,000,000 smaller vessels, then reformed perfectly. The watching scientists and military leaders had cheered for hours. But the real genius was in keeping it secret. The best trick, Admiral Wilson always said, is hiding something in plain sight. They built their ships to look normal from the outside. The seams between sections were hidden under smooth metal plates. Energy readings were masked to look like standard engine signatures. Even the crew quarters were designed to support both combined and split configurations. "If everyone thinks you're weak," Wilson had told Dr. Anna, "they won't look too closely at your strengths." Now, standing in front of the history display, Dr. Anna touched the screen showing that first successful test. The Drachnid fleet was coming, not knowing they were about to face the culmination of 30 years of human ingenuity. Her tablet beeped. A message from Admiral Wilson. "Remember when they laughed at our cute little fleet?" Anna smiled. The aliens had looked at Earth's ships and seen primitive technology. They should have looked at Earth's history instead. Humans had always been good at thinking differently, at finding unusual solutions to impossible problems. They thought size matters. She typed back to Wilson. They forgot that even mountains can be worn down by enough raindrops. Outside the station, Earth's 50 ships waited silently. Each one contained not just crews and weapons, but a revolution in warfare. Soon, the galaxy would learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in building bigger ships. It was in thinking bigger about small things. The Drachnid fleet appeared exactly where Earth's sensors predicted, just beyond Neptune's orbit. 500 massive warships, their dark hulls covered in glowing red lines that pulsed like angry veins. Each ship was 3 times larger than Earth's biggest carrier. In the observation room of the Drachnid command ship, General Kraz watched the human fleet with his 3 eyes. His scaled skin reflected the dim light as he laughed. 50 ships. The reports were correct. "These humans are even weaker than we thought," he said to his officers. His clawed hand pointed at the tactical display. Look how they gather near Jupiter, like scared prey huddling together. The Drachnid fleet moved forward in attack formation. Their ships formed a giant arrow shape, with their largest warships at the front. Energy readings showed they were powering up their main weapons. Back on Earth's command station, Admiral Wilson watched the enemy approach. Lieutenant Mark stood beside him, monitoring the tactical display. "Sir, the Galactic Council observation ships have arrived," Mark reported. "They're keeping their distance, but their sensors are focused on our fleet." Wilson nodded. Admiral Vale's ship was among the observers. The alien admiral had come to witness what he thought would be Earth's quick defeat. "Good," Wilson said. "Let them watch. Send the message to all ships. Fall back to Jupiter defense line. Look scared." Earth's 50 ships began to move backward, as if retreating from the much larger Drachnid fleet. Their movement was slightly shaky, like they were nervous. On the Drachnid command ship, General Kraz's officers cheered at the sight. "Look! They run already," one shouted. Kraz raised his hand for silence. "Send them our demands. Let's see if they're smart enough to surrender." The message boomed through all Earth's communication channels. "Primitive humans, your fleet is outnumbered 10 to 1. Surrender now, and we will make your slavery quick and painless. Resist, and we will destroy your ships one by one while your planet watches." Wilson read the message twice, then looked at his crew. Everyone knew their part in the plan. Everything they had trained for was about to happen. "Send our response," he ordered. The message that went back was simple: no. In the Council observation ships, Admiral Vale watched with interest. "Brave but foolish," he said to his aide. "They should have surrendered. Now we will see their little fleet destroyed." The Drachnid ships accelerated, their weapons fully charged. Red energy gathered at the front of each vessel, ready to fire. They launched their first attack, a massive wave of energy that lit up space like a new sun. "Evasive maneuvers," Wilson commanded. Earth's fleet scattered, each ship moving in a different direction. The energy wave passed through empty space where they had been moments before. "Impressive," General Kraz admitted, watching the humans dodge. "But they cannot dodge forever. Press the attack. Drive them back to Earth." The Drachnid fleet surged forward, firing continuous barrages. Earth's ships kept retreating, staying just out of range, drawing the enemy deeper into the solar system. "Admiral," Lieutenant Mark said quietly, "we're almost in position. Jupiter's magnetic field will help mask the energy signature when we—" Wilson held up his hand. "Not yet. Wait for my signal." The chase continued for another hour. The Drachnid fleet followed Earth's retreating ships, getting closer and closer to Jupiter. Their general was so focused on his prey that he didn't notice they were being led into a trap. In the Council ships, Admiral Vale leaned forward in his chair. Something felt wrong. The humans were too calm, too organized in their retreat. He had expected panic, chaos, or desperate attempts to fight back. "Magnify the image of their ships," he ordered suddenly. "Maximum detail." But before his crew could comply, Admiral Wilson's voice came through all channels, calm and clear. "All ships, prepare to execute HFY protocol. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity's fleet can really do. Execute HFY protocol." As soon as Admiral Wilson spoke these words, Earth's 50 ships began to change. Their smooth metal surfaces started to glow with blue light. Thin lines appeared across their hulls, like cracks in ice. On the Drachnid command ship, General Kraz squinted at his display. "What's happening?" "Scan those ships." Before his officers could respond, the transformation began. Each human ship split along those glowing lines. The pieces separated smoothly, drifting apart like petals from a flower. But they didn't stop there. Each piece split again and again and again. By the ancient stars, Admiral Vale whispered from his observation ship. His sensors were going crazy, trying to count the increasing number of human vessels. The space around Jupiter lit up like a fireworks display. Where 50 ships had been, Thousands now appeared, then tens of thousands, then millions. Each small ship was about the size of a car, sleek and deadly looking. Lieutenant Mark watched the enemy fleet's reaction on his screens. "Sir, the Drachnids have stopped advancing. They're holding position." Wilson smiled. "Show them our formation change." The millions of small ships began to move. They flowed through space like schools of fish, forming massive shapes. First, they created a giant sphere around the Drachnid fleet. Then they shifted into a massive wall. Finally, they split into 5 massive arrows, all pointing at the enemy. In the Council observation ships, officers rushed to update their scans. Admiral Vale's aide ran up with a report. "Sir, final count. Each human carrier has split into 2 million smaller ships. Total number, 100 million ships." Vale's 4 arms dropped to his sides in shock. Impossible. Their fleet. Their tiny fleet. On the Drachnid command ship, General Kraz was shouting at his tactical officers. "Target them. Fire at will." The Drachnid ships launched another massive energy barrage. But this time, the human ships simply flowed around the attack like water around rocks. Millions of small gaps opened in their formation, letting the energy pass harmlessly through. Conventional targeting systems are useless. A Drachnid officer reported. "The human ships are too small and too fast." In Earth's command center, Dr. Anna stood next to Wilson, watching her life's work in action. "The neural command system is working perfectly," she reported. "All pilots connected. Swarm coordination at 100%. Wilson pressed a button on his command chair. His voice reached every human pilot. "Remember your training, just like the simulations. Flow like water, strike like lightning." The human ships began to move again. They spun and twisted through space in complex patterns that looked both beautiful and terrifying. The Drachnid fleet, with their huge warships, suddenly seemed slow and clumsy in comparison. "Look at their faces," Mark said, pointing to the video feed from the Council ships. The alien observers were pressing against their viewing windows, their expressions showing a mixture of fear and awe. Admiral Vale's voice came through the command channel. "Wilson, you tricked us. You showed us 50 ships. We showed you exactly what you expected to see." Wilson replied calmly. "You looked at our fleet and saw what you wanted to see. A primitive race with primitive ships. You never asked what was inside them." The millions of human ships continued their dance around the Drachnid fleet. Some formations looked like giant waves, others like spinning galaxies. Each movement was perfect, coordinated by computers and human minds working together. General Kraz's voice shook as he addressed his fleet. "Hold position. Do not show fear to these tricksters." But fear was already spreading through the Drachnid ships. They had come expecting an easy victory over a weak enemy. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by the largest fleet ever seen in the galaxy. Wilson stood up from his command chair. "All ships, take battle positions. Show them why humanity chose quality over quantity. Show them why we built smart instead of big." The 100 million ships stopped their dance. They hung in space like stars, surrounding the Drachnid fleet completely. The real battle was about to begin. The battle began with a single word from Admiral Wilson: attack. Millions of human ships moved at once, breaking into smaller groups. Each group flowed like a river of light through space, targeting different Drachnid warships. The small ships were so fast that they left light trails behind them, creating beautiful patterns around Jupiter. "Target the biggest ships first," Wilson commanded. "Show them why size isn't everything." On the Drachnid command ship, General Kraz watched in horror as the first wave of human ships approached. His gunners fired their massive weapons, but hitting the small ships was like trying to shoot individual raindrops in a storm. "They're too close," a Drachnid officer screamed. "Our weapons are designed for large targets at long range." The human ships swarmed around the Drachnid vessels like angry bees. Each small ship carried a single, powerful laser. Alone, It couldn't hurt the huge alien warships. But when thousands fired at the same spot at once, hull breach on Warship 7, came the first panic call. They're cutting through our armor. Lieutenant Mark watched the tactical display as the battle unfolded. 1,000,000 small ships surrounded each Drachnid vessel, finding weak spots in their armor. When they found one, they focused their attacks there, like thousands of tiny drills working together. In the Council observation ships, Admiral Vale couldn't believe his eyes. "Their coordination is perfect," he muttered. "Each small ship moves like it knows exactly what all the others are doing." Dr. Anna smiled as she monitored the neural command system. Each human pilot controlled thousands of ships with their thoughts, while computers helped coordinate their movements. "Like playing a video game," she said, "but with real ships." The Drachnid fleet tried to fight back. They launched their fighter ships, but these were still too big and slow. The human ships simply flew circles around them, attacking from all angles at once. "Look," Lieutenant Mark pointed at his screen. Formation Delta is using the Jupiter maneuver. A group of human ships had led several Drachnid vessels close to Jupiter's strong magnetic field. As the large ships tried to turn, millions of small ships pushed them from behind. The Drachnid ships spun out of control, their own size and weight working against them. "Their shields are strong against big hits," Wilson commented, watching the battle. "But they never designed them to stop millions of small attacks at once." He was right. The Drachnid shields flickered and failed under the constant barrage of small laser hits. It was like waves eroding a cliff. Each hit was tiny, but there were millions of them every second. General Kraz's voice boomed across all channels. "Pull back. Retreat to." His transmission cut off as his ship's communications array was destroyed by a precise strike from 1,000 human vessels. The battle turned into a dance of light and movement. The human ships moved in patterns that looked random but were carefully planned. They formed tunnels of ships, trapping Drachnid vessels inside walls of constant laser fire. They created spinning circles that cut through enemy armor like saw blades. "Sir," Mark reported, 30 Drachnid ships destroyed. No human casualties yet. Our ships are too small and fast to hit. Wilson nodded. "Send the message." The Admiral's voice reached every ship in the battle. "Drachnid fleet, you have seen only a fraction of our capability. Surrender now, or we will be forced to demonstrate more." To emphasize the point, the human ships formed a giant hand in space, then crushed an empty area between them, showing what they could do to the remaining Drachnid ships. In the Council ships, Admiral Vale was already sending urgent messages to his superiors. The reports all said the same thing. Earth wasn't just a Class 3 minor military power. They had developed an entirely new way of fighting in space. As the remains of the Drachnid fleet began powering down their weapons in surrender, Wilson looked at the battle display with quiet satisfaction. "Sometimes," he said to his crew, "the smallest things make the biggest difference." 1 week after the Battle of Jupiter, Earth's command station was crowded with aliens. Representatives from every major galactic power had come to witness the formal surrender of the Drachnid fleet and reassess Earth's status in the galaxy. Admiral Wilson stood at the main window, watching Earth's ships reform. Millions of small vessels flowed together like mercury, combining smoothly until only 50 capital ships remained. The process still amazed the alien observers, who pressed against the windows to watch. "Quite a show, isn't it?" Wilson asked Admiral Vale, who stood beside him with all 4 arms clasped behind his back. "We were wrong about Earth," Vale admitted. His translator made his voice sound humbled. "We saw 50 ships and assumed we knew everything. We never imagined." "That's the problem with assumptions," Wilson smiled. "They can blind you to new possibilities." In the station's main hall, Dr. Anna was explaining the technology to a group of fascinated alien engineers. She had removed a panel from one of the small ships to show its inner workings. "The key isn't just making ships that can split apart," she explained. "It's making millions of ships that can think and act as one, like your body's cells all working together. The alien engineers took furious notes. One of them raised a tentacle. But the power required to maintain magnetic bonds between so many ships is less than what you waste on powering giant warships. Anna finished with a smile. Sometimes smaller is more efficient. In another part of the station, Lieutenant Mark led the formal surrender ceremony. General Kraz, now a prisoner of war, signed the document with a shaking claw. "You could have destroyed us all," Kraz said quietly. "Why didn't you?" "Because Earth doesn't want to destroy," Mark replied. "We just want to be left alone." Today's victory isn't about destruction. It's about showing the galaxy that there's more than one way to be strong. The day's main event was the Galactic Council's new classification ceremony. The council chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Many had come just to see the humans who had defeated the mighty Drachnid Empire with only 50 ships. The council president, a tall being made of shifting crystal, stood to make the announcement. Based on the recent demonstration of their military capabilities, technological innovation, and tactical superiority, Earth is hereby reclassified as a Class 1 major military power. Applause filled the chamber. Wilson accepted the new classification certificate with a modest nod. Furthermore, the president continued, Earth will be granted a permanent seat on the Council's Defense Committee. We believe their unique perspective will be valuable. After the ceremony, Wilson found Dr. Anna in her lab, already working on improvements to the neural command system. "The aliens are calling it the HFY Revolution," he told her. "They say we've changed space warfare forever." Anna looked up from her work. "They're wrong, you know. We didn't change warfare. We just remembered something they forgot." "What's that?" "That bigger isn't always better. That nature's greatest achievements often come in small packages." She pointed to a display showing the human cell. "After all, every person is made of trillions of tiny cells working together." As the day ended, Wilson stood in his office, looking at that old photograph of the first prototype again. Earth's 50 ships patrolled calmly outside his window, each one containing its secret army of smaller vessels. "Sir," Mark entered with a report, "the Drachnid Empire has withdrawn all forces from our sector, and we're receiving requests from 17 different worlds wanting to learn our ship-splitting technology." Wilson shook his head with a smile. "Tell them the technology isn't for sale, but we're happy to help them develop their own new ideas." He turned back to the window, watching Earth spin peacefully below. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate humanity's ability to think differently. Sometimes, the greatest strength comes not from being the biggest or the most powerful, but from being clever enough to change the rules of the game entirely. Out in space, Earth's fleet continued its patrol. To most observers, they looked like ordinary ships again. But now everyone knew that inside each one waited an army, ready to split into millions at a moment's notice, a testament to human ingenuity and the power of thinking small to achieve something big.